Right, I think that was the recording in progress. So what we'll do, we'll get started. First of all, a big welcome to all of you that are joining us today on our panel discussion. It is all about ERP transformation and the road to success. As you've seen, the meeting is being recorded. We had a huge amount of interest and a lot of people that weren't able to make this particular slot. So we will be publishing the link afterwards and making it available, so you can rewatch it if you particularly liked it, or you can pass it on to colleagues and friends to watch at a later stage that's more convenient. We've got a set of questions that we'll be running through, but equally really keen to hear from you. So if there's any burning questions that you have, if you can put them in the chat, we'll try to get to it. If we don't get to all of your questions, we'll have a chat with the panel afterwards and make sure that we circulate the answers that come out of that. So ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, my colleague the other day described it as how business does business, which I thought was quite an apt way and a simple way of describing that. These ERP programs, often we see them as the open heart surgery within IT. You only really want to do an ERP program if you really need to. They're high risk and there's lots of things that can go wrong. So what we're going to talk about today is how they don't go wrong and what we could do to make them successful. So at 9 Feet Tall, as many of you probably know, we specialise in delivering complex change programs such as these ERP programs. And really where we play a key role is in bringing together not just the technology and the IT, but also the people, the processes and the data. So it is a true transformation instead of just a system implementation. We've got a fabulous panel today. I'm really delighted to be joined by these three gents. It's probably easiest if I let them introduce themselves. So before I introduce them, I'll introduce myself. So I'm Esther McMorris. I'm founder and chief executive of 9 Feet Tall. Rob, did you want to go first?
Sure. Rob Stone, I'm head of what we call change and business improvement at Ashurst, which is a law firm. I've been working in change for a long time, too many years that I care to mention. I met Esther when I was working for Siebel, then became part of Oracle. That was a long time ago, down with the RAC. And since then, I was kind of doing Siebel for a long time, and then moved into Reuters doing kind of your real kind of big ERP, so global SAP rollouts there for many years, and then into media and industry, into Public Group was the company doing SAP rollouts there, before getting back into legal and doing legal ERP, which is SAP does exist in legal, but not to the point where a couple of other big players like 3E and Aderant and things like that. But so always doing ERP. So yeah, I manage a change team and a BA team at Ashurst.
Yeah. Amazing, good. Well, we'll tap into your experience across the various sectors as well. So it'd be interesting to see what differs. Dave.
Hi everybody, afternoon. David Durant, I'm delivery director at 9 Feet Tall. I come from a product development and engineering background, which I think sets me up pretty well for ERP environments, and I've been supporting clients over the last few years, either directly overseeing the delivery of complex programs, including ERP, advising others on how they might go about delivering them, or assuring ERP programs also. So a little bit of a flavour of where I've been involved in that space in the past.
Perfect. And Nick, thank you for joining us today as well.
No worries. Thank you very much for inviting me along, Esther. Good to see everybody. My name is Nick Paul. I'm a manager at 9 Feet Tall. My background is within the social housing industry, delivering complex change across the board in many different varieties, typically focused on digital transformation, including some specific housing related ERP transformation as well. It's a fantastic space for us to open up on. Really keen to get stuck into this conversation, and actually this is my third panel event, so for 9 Feet Tall, so 3 is the magic number, so this is going to go fantastically well, and I'm really pleased to be here.
That's it. No pressure, Nick. I know he's built it up now, so that's fine. I'm really delighted to be joined by these three gents. We've clearly got a lot of expertise and experience in ERP. I'm sure there's a lot of success stories. I'm sure we've also seen some pain points as well. So let's get kicked off really. If we look at ERP implementations, it's got a very poor reputation. I read the other day 34% of UK firms report major failure when implementing their ERP, and that's a major failure. There's a lot that don't always quite get the benefits as well. So when embarking on these types of programs, organizations are nervous. They're nervous about spend, they're nervous about the success. How do we go about creating a compelling vision for these types of programs, and whose responsibility is that? Nick, whilst you're still on screen, shall we start with you? So, and it's your third event, so you're a pro.
Happy to step in. So I think the vision, having a clear vision is really, really critical, but it's also a step that's quite often missed as well. I'm not sure everybody necessarily fully appreciates the value in completing this. I think typically everybody wants to get going. There's an excitement, there's a commitment from everybody. So actually, why do we need to worry about actually doing this when actually we could just be cracking on? But really the value comes in actually bringing the organization along with you for along the journey. So I think it's really about, if you can create something that's engaging and, as you say, compelling, that everybody within the organization can really understand and get behind, then that's just going to make the whole transformation so much more easier for you to manage. We'll talk a lot about people today, because I think that's as much as the complexity as the technology, and this vision is all about making sure that we can understand how important this is to the organization, and how people can ultimately support it and make it a success. So in terms of some of those tips, I would say keep it simple, keep it short, make sure that, you know, all of that really helps us to communicate it and make it appealing. And most importantly, make it ambitious and make it have some energy and excitement, so that people can genuinely see that there's going to be a future state that they can really get excited about.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Creating the excitement, and I guess the relevance as well, so people understand kind of where that sits. When we go and do kind of these types of ERP programs, often 9 Feet will get involved in doing a rapid health check or assessment on programs that perhaps aren't going quite so well. And there's lots of common themes that come out. And from our last kind of 6 months of work, we've got 5 themes that come out where there's a need to improve, or where there's a need or gaps, I guess, that need to be filled. Leadership, resourcing, governance, data, and vendor management tend to pop out. I'd be really keen, from your real life experience, just to draw out kind of what are the key themes for you. So maybe, Rob, if we can pick on you and share your thoughts around where you feel kind of some of those key areas of failure are.
There are a few. I mean, in my experience, some of the things that kind of get overseen or get focused on a bit later are things like data. Is always sort of just integral to this, and really unearthing the scale of, invariably it's because the data's all over the place basically, and it kind of needs to be pulled together, and any system that you put in for a business reason is just driven by the quality of the data in there, so that often gets overlooked. I've seen that trip up programs in the past, but my angle certainly today and most recently is more from a change perspective, and I think it comes to sponsors really. This shouldn't be a technically led program. It's KISS and it's IT, fair enough. It shouldn't be led by IT at all. You know, you need to have the right sponsorship there, and that depends on the organization. I think, you know, sometimes they're finance driven, sometimes they're operationally driven, and all the rest of it. I think it depends where really where the kind of project maturity lies, and get the right person involved to kind of to sponsor that. And similarly to what Nick was saying, you know, we call it a case for change. You know, it sounds like really simple things to do, but I've been in not just ERP but any project where things like that are not done. So people just assume all sorts of things and they go off in slightly different directions, unless you've got that really compelling and quite a simple case for change, which you then drop out the key messages and everyone's on the same page. And getting that really ironed out up front helps, gets people off on, you know, on the right foot.
Yeah, okay. Dave, what's your thoughts? I'm sure we all in favour of business change. Is there any other elements that stand out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go for the really dry sounding one, which is governance, and it does sound really dull. ERP implementations, they are super complex, and the transformations that can come alongside, they're so exciting for businesses. It is a bit of a playground. There's an awful lot of huge benefits that come out the back of an ERP implementation, but the governance it can be a huge blocker to that. If the governance is set up in the wrong way, it can just be an administration engine. It creates a whole industry in its own right. But seen in the right way, if it's seen as a decision-making forum, it's an enabler to remove roadblocks for the program team to go deliver this really well. That's the sort of lens that I'd like to see governance in, rather than something that is just progress reporting, lots of hurdles. It should be about opening those doors for the team.
Yeah, and I know we were talking the other day about just enough governance, Dave. So it's getting that right balance of having sufficient control and transparency, but without hampering progress. And I guess that's the key. And within that, Dave, so you're talking about governance, which is clearly a key project management principle. Are there any other best practice project management tips that you have for these types of ERP programs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes down to one of the tools that I would always recommend putting in place up front, which is the business case. And it can be overlooked. There's certain businesses with a fairly high risk appetite, which will say, look, we're fully bought in, we're quite happy to release the funds. You guys just go do what needs to be done effectively. And further down the line, all of these programs will hit certain challenges. And without everybody being on the same page, what are we trying to achieve? How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? How much of our team is it going to consume? It presents natural hurdles, and getting everybody on the same page to a business case up front, super, super important. The other one I just talk about is probably the resourcing side of things. These are huge, can be huge endeavors. I've been involved in some very small ERPs right up to huge tier 1 implementations, and the resource mobilization up front, I'm going to say it always tends to be slightly on the back foot. There's a handshake between what your vendor's going to provide and what's owed from the project team. That's all going to be outlined in the contracts you establish up front, but getting that right capability on the business side, sometimes that means releasing people from roles, backfilling, bringing in capability or upskilling people, getting people into that position well in advance of the wave that will hit them through discovery, and then this rapid drive to deliver is super important.
Yeah, and I guess it's one not to underestimate. And I think, in particular in the current market, there's a real talent shortage as well. So knowing you want resources is one thing, but actually securing it is another. Your business case really is really interesting and interlinks with your compelling case for change, Nick, doesn't it? So if you've got a North Star, you know where you want to go to, it aids prioritization and decision making. Is there any other areas that kind of pop out for you as high risk areas?
I suppose a really important one, and one that can feel really frustrating, is the idea, and a bit similar to what Dave was talking about earlier, around change control. And how you can make seamless and frictionless governance and put that in place to kind of support the organization and the program, as opposed to feeling like it's hampering it. I would say the real critical things around how we can kind of encourage that and inform that, I would say we really need to understand what are the critical decisions that we're trying to make, what's the purpose behind them, and making sure that everybody fully understands the reason for why control is needed. So ultimately, so that we can make sure that, everybody understands the framework, they understand the purpose behind it. We make it scalable as well. So Dave was talking about ranges of different types of programs, but also within the program itself, there's going to be a number of different decisions and controls that are going to be needed. So make it scalable, make it something that actually fits for the type of program you're trying to deliver. And then fundamentally, I think from a leadership capacity, it's about role modeling, making sure that everybody is delivering in the way, and particularly a top level line management approach, making sure that they are also fully bought into it, but also then delivering it in the same way that we would expect everybody else to be as well.
Yeah, and Rob, looking at your kind of vast career in, I don't know, media, legal, membership, you name it, the list goes on, doesn't it? And ERP projects in there. Is there a secret to success of these transformations, how to get that right?
I said just before, making sure you've got the right business driver, business sponsor, business led. You know, ultimately this ERP's in there so the business can do what it wants to do quicker, better, whatever reason, you know. So having that person really driving it. And I've seen we all see all sorts of different types of sponsors, ones that kind of expect it to be delivered on a platter versus ones that really want to kind of get involved. And I think they're clearly the ones that get involved and buy into it, in my opinion, have a higher success rate. And they don't always start with that view. So I think there's an element of coaching and supporting and thinking, where are the sponsors on this and where do they need to be? Do they really know what's expected from them? To Nick's point as well, you know, very clear on what, and that leads into the governance as well. What sort of decisions are going to be presented to them that they need to make, or how they need to direct their team to keep it going. Otherwise, things just get clogged up. So I think
bearing in mind, I guess these programs can take 2, 3, 4 years. It's not uncommon for sponsors maybe to leave halfway through a program or to go off. Have you got any experience on how you manage that transition from one sponsor to the next?
I guess if they're leaving, and it's unfortunate, it's probably for a reason where there's an opportunity to get a fresh sponsor in and kind of redirect it. But it goes beyond that. The clear roles and responsibilities have to be there, and you know, it will come to a point where, again with ERP, a lot of people go, yeah, obviously, well, you know, we want to avoid too much development or configuration, so we'll change our processes to be vanilla or whatever, all that sort of stuff. We see it time and time again. It doesn't really happen with that. But how when you unearth that, that's got to be escalated, you know, because eventually, you know, the person at the top, sponsor or whoever, might sort of say, yeah, we can do that. We want to get it done quickly, and this is the budget. And it inevitably takes a bit longer and a bit more, maybe because ways of working aren't adapting to the level that ideally you want. That also has an impact on the potential benefits and all the rest of it. So having that sponsor and having the clear roles and responsibilities and the governance that can escalate that stuff to empower people to make the decisions to change what they're doing, I think helps a lot.
Yeah. Dave, have you got any view on strong leadership and excellence in leadership, where you've seen it, or some examples or some attributes that you'd be looking for?
Yeah. So I think just supporting some of that, just going off the back of what Rob was saying there, actually, is we've talked a little bit about having a clear vision and alignment of leadership up front, and also a business case that reflects that and is really clear on the outcomes you're trying to achieve, the benefits, all that good stuff. Thinking about sponsors potentially switching in and out of programs like this, if you've already got alignment there, that transition is going to be much more seamless. So I think, you know, kind of brings back the importance of those things and how these things start to thread together through the duration of the program. In terms of strong leadership that really is effective in driving these programs, I think it's firstly creating a really supportive environment for the team to deliver. So we talked a little bit about the role of governance in this, but it's also that leadership that opens the doors for the team to deliver this stuff really well, really transparently. So it's creating a safe space largely for the team to go deliver effectively. It enables good visibility of how the program's actually going. You know, the tendency where these are very, you know, threatening environments is that people will keep stuff to themselves. A lot of stuff goes under the carpet. Things are eternally green or eternally amber with no clear route out. I think the other area of strong leadership is very much that sponsoring of key messages. Nick's talked a lot to the change side of things so far, and the importance of leadership in the change. So very much sponsoring those key messages. And I think key for me is maintaining that ongoing alignment across leadership throughout the program, keeping the eyes on the prize, that North Star, and those outcomes that you're looking to deliver.
Yeah, and I think there's often a difference. Oh, sorry, Nick.
Sorry, I was just going to add another bit in there. Something that I've seen most recently on a program I'm supporting is that these are programs that take, as you said earlier, they take a long time. They're many years, and energy can ebb and flow, and you can get program and project fatigue within the project teams. And I think another real key sort of facet of any leadership is around actually you are bringing the energy, you're bringing the excitement, you're bringing the motivation back into the team, and you're actually not only creating that safe space, which is critically important, but you're actually creating an environment that people want to work in, and they want to feel like they're actually developing and building upon something that's really positive. So I've seen that most recently in the way that my recent client has taken that opportunity, and they're really building that back into the team. So yeah, really critical too.
Good.
One other thing, just to add the next level down, to sponsors, where I've seen it work really well is invariably there are a lot of different functions that are really impacted by a big ERP program, and getting the kind of functional heads to buy in and be accountable for the benefits, and maybe we'll dive into it a bit later, was really critical, because if you can get them to a point where they feel accountable and they're owning the benefits, and that could be a headcount reduction or process, whatever it might be, however you kind of want to get into that, then they're all of a sudden very interested. It's up to the program to present to them to say, there's a threat to some of these benefits, which you're eventually going to have to kind of report up to your big boss and what have you. And fair enough, there's a realization time on that. But where I've seen that accountability really locked in, the level of engagement is great, basically.
Yeah, getting them on the hook. I like it. It.
I could have just said get them on the hook. Yeah, would have
no. Explanation. Nick will give you some tips. He's on number 3, so I'm really joking. No, that's really helpful. Thank you. The one thing I wanted to explore a little bit more about was around managing scope. And I think in particular on these large programs, it is really tricky right at the outset to really clearly articulate scope, and in particular when we're looking at things like viable products and minimal viable products, and what does that look like. We often then get an SI partner that come in and they're on the hook again, so they're there to do development or configuration or the technical side of it. And maybe we stick with you, Rob, but have you got any kind of views on, in particular, that relationship with the SI partner? How can you really truly manage scope together?
Wow.
Hard question.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, being really clear on the outcomes, but I think in any kind of, I don't mean to kind of dodge it a bit, but you've got to build up a decent amount of trust between the parties involved. If you don't have that, then that's where it kind of people get a bit, it's not my sort of responsibility, whatever it is, and kind of got to get that sense that we're actually all in this together and blur the lines a bit. You kind of have to have that. It then comes back to the governance you're saying. But in all honesty, I mean, I've worked with a lot of different system integrators. I'd actually be quite interested to hear where you've seen it work well as an integrator. Maybe David and Nick can answer that, where you've seen a client where it, lessons learned from your perspective.
We'll come on to that. We'll give them a second to think about it. Where have you seen the challenges though, Rob? Where does it, because I like your bit about trust, and because ultimately all parties need to be successful for this program to be successful. So it's not them and us, it's got to be one team. But where are the things when it does come unstuck, what are the kind of triggers, or where do you see challenges come in?
I think I don't, honestly, I'm scratching my head here.
We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you in a sec. I think Nick's to the rescue there. Yeah. Nick, have you got any views on scope management and third-party management, and how you can knit that together?
Yeah, for me, I think we see it quite frequently. It's a common occurrence, and it can be at different scales again. So, but generally there usually is some form of there is something that you're going to need to manage there. For me, the best way and the best approaches are to be as open and transparent and clear about what it is that you're looking to deliver, and breaking that down into the minutiae, the granular detail of what's being delivered, and allowing yourself and being able to be in a position where you can roll that up into something which you can see at a high level too, so that people at director level as well as the people that are delivering have got a clear line and transparency between the requirements that were set out from the outset of the procurement process through to the final delivery of the solution at the end. And I think as long as you've got that line of sight and you've got that really open and transparent, and you're reporting on it on a regular and frequent basis in an open forum, then generally those issues tend to be able to be managed in the groups and forums that you've got in place. Dave, I don't know if there's anything else that you'd want to add at that.
Yeah, I think it's almost established up front whether you're going to get this sort of problem down the line, and that's largely through the involvement of the right people up front. There are different things that come into how you might approach an ERP. We'll talk a bit about fit to standard, or about highly customized solutions. Where you don't get the right people involved up front, looking at certainly what they do today, what the current pain points are, what are the problems that you're looking to solve through delivery of an ERP. Fundamentally, it's an enabler for delivering strategy at the high level at the end of the day. But where you don't get those right people involved at the start, there's lots of assumptions that are carried forward, and they iteratively get challenged through delivery, and that always presents a barrier to getting this over the line. Introduces scope creep, because as each new person gets a little bit more insight to what the solution might do, there's all the shiny things. The sweet shop kind of opens up, and there's other opportunities that people might not have thought about that might enable other areas of strategy to be delivered in the future, or efficiencies. But where do you stop at that point?
Yeah, it's not a reality though that as you go through these programs and you go from high level design and you get into the really gritty detail and you lift the lid, there's always some new things that come out. So I don't think we've ever been on a project where it is exactly the same. How do you accept that there will be a level of change, and how do you then manage that?
Yeah, so
Nick can go, yeah.
I'll jump in, Dave can
Queuing
go.
up for that question.
I'll start and then Dave can add the detail. For me, I talked a little bit about it earlier with the change control process. It's about making sure that you've got a very rigorous process around actually how that's managed. Yeah. You'll have tolerances, you'll make it scalable, but ultimately it'll have an impact in terms of the overall solution design. It'll have an impact on the business processes that will need to be related as well. And it'll also have a commercial impact. So you need to make sure that you've got control over it. But ultimately, if there are opportunities there, you want to encourage those and create an environment where everybody is talking about them and putting them forward for consideration. So you don't want to stagnate the opportunity. You want to encourage the opportunity to talk about these things. But ultimately, it needs to be in a wider impactful and understood way around how we should move forward with these.
Okay, we've got lots of good things there. Control, we talked about transparency, decision making. I think the kind of that trusted partnership, Rob, that you were talking about, I think that's really key. Are there any other nuggets of scope creep that either of you three have got to share?
I would just touch on, I guess, adding to that list of words there, Esther, is kind of a healthy tension. And as Nick said, I largely struggle with a little bit that word control in a lot of senses within program and project delivery. I would always say you can't control it, you influence it, but actually within change control, that there are actual control mechanisms. So this is where you can really kind of put the fence around that scope. But the healthy tension that I'm talking about is very much when we hit hurdles, challenges that aren't necessarily overcome in the way that were expected through those initial discovery sessions as you'd have at the start of an ERP project. You're then looking at, do I change my business process? Do I customize some of the functionality within the solution? And there should be a healthy tension through that change governance forum, through that change board, about where should the trade-off be? Do we really value adding more complexity into the functionality because you're going to pay for that? and you've also got to maintain that in the post go live world as well. A lot of the solutions today that everyone's putting in, they'll be cloud-based. They have an evergreen approach to keeping them up to date. And as each of those releases come through, the more highly customized and bespoke your solution is, the more you're going to have to evaluate and test those releases to make sure everything works for you. So I think that healthy tension I mentioned within those change boards should be viewed within the cost today, then the challenge of getting the ERP over the line, but also what that means in the future world.
Yeah.
I think it's dangerous if you lock it down too much too early. I mean, these programs inevitably go on for a very long time. The business drivers change and all the rest of it. So, so I say you have to have this healthy tension or this trust that things will change. And how do you kind of efficiently look at that? It's not just from a technical reason either, that all of a sudden, okay, it can't do what we want. You know, the business wants to do something else, or you know, decisions made on there's a choice whether to try and still go for a benefit or not, or change it, whatever it might be, that maybe a sponsor or stakeholder's making that changes what goes on, that triggers a whole change of work that system integrator, whoever might not have agreed to. So I think
I think change is inevitable in most programs, and I think it's how you manage it, isn't it, and how you assess that. Which segues us really. What I wanted to kind of explore a bit further was around the process side of things. So it's not always technology, and I think more and more, particularly new clients that we're working with, they want it out of the box or vanilla or fit to standard, because clearly if they can plug a solution in, and the lesser configuration they need to do, the simpler and perhaps more cost effective that is. Which is very easily said. The reality is, if you are doing that, your business processes will change significantly, and ways of working will change significantly. Equally, there's a real opportunity to transform those. And maybe Rob, kind of whilst we've got you on the middle of the screen here, kind of get your thoughts on the importance of re-engineering your processes before you kind of replicate them onto a new system.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very expensive thing to go through to replicate what you do today, to speed up what you do today without any benefit. It has to be a level of transport. Usually there is. I think this is where having the right business people involved, the subject matter experts, the champions, that you got that tension with do we want to go vanilla and all the rest of it, but they're the ones that will identify inefficiencies or opportunities for doing things, but also you need to somehow quantify those things, because inevitably a lot of emotion is involved in this stage, where some areas or regions might say, I have to do this because it's the way we do business, whatever it is, I cannot change, what have you. This is where you need the strong governance. And then that links, in my opinion, links through to a degree mechanically to, well, if you don't do this, this is the impact, and it rolls up to the benefits, and you can kind of pull the right person in. But this is absolutely where you've got your SMEs involved and sort of mapping it out. They have to be in the right headspace. They have to want to. They have to have bought into that style of case. We do need to change. I understand what I need to do to change and what that's going to unlock. And this, we're committed to kind of, changing how we do it. And these are the bits that we need to change, or whatever it might be. They have to be encouraged and bought into that right frame of mind as you go into these workshops to want to do that. We've all seen it before. You pull them in and you've got people, I was just sitting back, crossing my arms just then, people that come in with their arms crossed or don't want to change and kind of resistant, that's a few flags there that you then need to kind of work on behind the scenes or directly sometimes. But
okay, we just got a question through on the chat as well, which segues and which kind of ties in really neatly with this around the requirements. And maybe Nick, if we can move over to you, how do you, when you're at the early stages of an ERP program, how can you make sure you accurately capture and prioritize requirements, and ultimately, I guess that helps you manage scope, in particular in those early stages?
Yeah, I would say, working your way through those complex web of internal processes is a really good starting point to be able to start unearthing where those are. I think using your as-is mapping will quickly identify where your problem cases are, where your pain points are, where those opportunities lie within your current state. but also when you think about when you want to move forward to your future state, where's the opportunities, where's the ambition within the organization? Potentially it's in automation, potentially it's in other ways. You know, there's lots of new and exciting technologies that are at our disposal, which you might be looking forward to. You might be actually thinking that's not where we're at from a maturity perspective. So I think it's about wedding it into where the organization looks and wants to be. I think the next thing to think about with requirements specifically is making sure that they're solution agnostic. You don't want to be designing a requirement which is almost pointing towards the solution. This is the really important part, is around actually making sure you're defining what the problem is and what you would like to see as the next phase. But really what you don't want to do is end up determining what solution you're going to end up choosing when actually that might not be the best fit for you as an organization. So trying to keep in the present and not think about too much around what the potential could, what the solution could be. I suppose the other main thing I would say is that I think Rob spoke to a little bit of this, is making sure that you've got the knowledge in the room to help you identify what those requirements are. So it's good to have a good spread of people at a senior level, so they understand what that strategic view of the organization is looking to be, understanding it at the top level. But really, really importantly, the people that are doing the ones that really know actually where those opportunities are, they'll give you the most amount of feedback and the most amount of important and rich information for you to take forward into those requirements too.
Yeah, okay, really useful. Thank you, Nick. Once you've got that and you've got your requirements and your I guess ultimately some of your future state and your processes, Dave, how do you then marry that with the art of the possible? Because there is, you know, there's some really good solutions out there that have already got things kind of that are good and are working and might be really relevant. So how far do you take your to-be process mapping versus actually looking at the potential solutions?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think this is one of those lines that a lot of organizations struggle with. You know, how much work up front versus you know, how much you should be diving in with vendors and looking at solutions fairly early. I think the main thing, as Nick was talking about, is get a really good handle on what it is that you do today. What are your pain points? Don't do that just from a functional perspective. Very much include the IT teams in that as well, because there is very much a handshake. You know, you've got this you know, joint relationship in how you do things today through IT systems and people. So I'm really understanding that and looking at what you value as well. So Rob's talked a little bit about, you know, we talk about out of the box a fair amount and how many people really take a direct vanilla solution. Mm-hmm. That is dead right. There are always nuances, but by having a really good look at yourself as you are today, what are the things that you really value? What are those things that you really want to maintain into the future world that are unique to you? They provide maybe a USP in how you do business, or they are very much valued in the way that you work internally. But it's identifying those key bits for the bespoke areas and getting get your ducks in a row, get everybody positioned well before you engage with vendors, so that when as I talked about the shiny thing, best has put it as the art of the possible, there's the sweetie shop. You're going to see everything that will be thrown at you in terms of what these solutions can do, but being really clear and aligned as an organization before you go into that room with the right SMEs, the right support, to be able to say, look, we know what we're trying to achieve. We have a clear business strategy. We know the areas within an ERP that we're looking for a step change improvement through this deployment. It's somewhere along that line that you're going to find we know enough about ourselves. We've talked about the things that we would like for the future, our unique elements. It's at that point that you really want to get and here's what the solutions look like and how those processes for out of the box might look, plus some of that art of the possible that might open up new doors for how you might achieve those same outcomes just in a slightly different way.
Perfect. You make it sound very simple, Dave. I like that. So,
it's a doddle. This is an easy stage. It's really difficult. And I think it comes back to our scope creep bit. That's very much the point in time when things really can start to expand and grow legs, and suddenly you've gone from we can have this out the door within 6 months, no problems, to you're looking at something 18 months plus. So
yeah, and I guess some of the system integrators would be keen to upsell new areas, which may or may not be beneficial.
Esther, just an add-in, just to jump in really quickly, we haven't really spoken about benefits to any great degree, and we might come on to those a bit later.
Yeah,
but
we can
really,
open that door now. So.
No, I won't open the door. I'm not in control over this one. But really, for me, like, we need to have an understanding of not only the vision and the strategic view as to where we're heading for the organization, but also what's the outcome that we're looking actually to achieve in this first phase of delivery. And that can also help you to kind of help make sure that you're within the scope of what you're intending. So if you're looking, if efficiency is potentially not your driver and actually it's something else, then automation is probably not for you. You know, if AI and predictive analytics is something that you're really interested in because you want to get more insight over your data, then maybe that is something that you might want to look at. So yeah, really looking and thinking about where those benefits are that you're looking for.
And it can be really hard because sometimes there's an old legacy system that ain't fit for purpose and actually it needs replacing, but actually defining some benefits up front and then also how you're going to measure it is really key. Rob, I'm going to pick your brain there, just to kind of thinking of the kind of various projects that you've done. You know, if you've got any thoughts around how you best go about capturing those benefits and also then understanding how you're going to measure them.
Yeah, I've seen it on all different sizes. I've been lucky enough to work on a big global SAP rollouts where I've had a dedicated benefits person who's solely looking at benefits. In addition, we're going back to the SI bit, also a dedicated dependency manager and stuff like that. That's a really big scale, which is great. It's a luxury sort of thing. But then also it's, you know, we've got the other end of it. But I guess at the end of the day, it's all the same thing. For benefits, for me, start as early as possible. Business case, like what we're doing at Ashurst is we're involved right at the beginning now, and any initiative that comes up, any business case that's created, we put on the business case template the categories of expected benefits. So we start that conversation with the sponsor, identifying the sponsor, to start preparing them for this. Don't forget why we're doing this, and this is where we think we're going to head with this. You then get into the approval and then go through all the phases, and you put a lot more detail and granularity into that, and then it's iterative review. It's usually a financial and a non-financial split initially. If you're lucky, you've got a project accountant that looks after the finance stuff. There might be a cost of a headcount reduction or a system retirement, whatever it might be, that, you know, it's just fairly, I'm not a finance person, fairly easy, black and white, you know, it's money. And then there's the non-financial, and then I typically break that down into sort of categories early on that you then drill into. As a client experience, employee experience, better data insight, less risk, whatever it might be. You can kind of sort of group those. And then for me, as you go through into more detailed design, it all hangs off ultimately what the 2B is, and you can then kind of look at the benefits. So you know straight away where you then go back into your scope bit. Okay, we're going to radically change that. Okay, which are the areas that are impacted by that? Do we have to recalculate that? Do we then present that as a decision? But it's just iterative. This stuff, as you say, changes. It happens all the time, and so you've got to keep either every month, whatever it is, just thinking, right, just have a quick iterative review. Are we still on track for this? Is there anything that challenges that?
I completely agree, and I think you started early. You keep it alive. The one question I have, I often see in particular around the financial benefits, and in particular because ERPs are expensive, it's in the multi-million pounds. How can you put a reality check on there that your ROI actually stacks up and isn't just there to get the business case approved, but they're actually achievable? Have you got any experience in how you can, you know, make it?
So I said earlier, you pull in the right people. They're the ones that are really realistic and going to say, yeah, we can. This is what we think we can get from this. The realization of the benefits is another one that I find from a change management point of view quite challenging. All too often project approaches are built around closing a project fairly soon after go live. That's where the fun starts for most people. So how long it takes to realize a benefit, you can't, and I don't mean to be really negative to using headcount reduction as an example. It's just the one that springs to mind. There's lots of other benefits. That's usually quite an unfortunate one, but you don't reduce headcount straight after go live. You've got to let this thing bed in and transition into it. And it can take months occasionally. and who's there to do that, and how do you transition the benefits monitoring and realization into a BAU organization as well? It has to be there, and these are all considerations that aren't always baked into a benefits approach. Yeah, and some, yeah,
Yeah.
I think they've done at varying levels of success, but
yeah. Nick, did that open the door to benefits to you? And have you got any other thoughts that are worth sharing, both on actually identifying it and then measuring it?
So I think having clear ownership against the benefit as well. So identifying who is responsible for the delivery or for realizing those benefits, I think is quite important. You know, you're then showing a line towards, actually, this isn't something that is just for the business case to get financial approval. This is actually something that is going to be something that we're going to measure throughout the whole of the program, including post go live and into when we're moving towards business as usual. So for me, I think it's, you know, making sure that we've got that clear line of responsibility. And I guess, like I said, you know, continuing to monitor them and measure them and keep them as something which is a regular touch point in for the organization. Unfortunately, again, we do tend to get wrapped up in the day-to-day and the challenges and the risks and the issues that are constantly bombarding us through delivery. We need to make sure that we've still got a regular touch point on the reason for why we're doing this. And I think if we can keep that in our mind, then actually that's more than likely to become reality and something that we'll achieve, rather than letting it drift off into something that it was just done at the beginning.
Okay, and that's helpful. And having that identified and having your North Star is great. There is a reality, and Dave, I'm going to pick on you here, that actually not everyone embraces these changes. I know Robbie just hinted that there could be kind of redundancies. It could be changes to ways of working. What have you found, Dave, as the kind of key blockers, and how do you overcome that that business resistance?
So this is one of the trickier areas, and I guess what we see typically, Rob mentioned finance. Apologies to all finance people on the call, but I guess there's a we see quite regularly kind of a weddiness to spreadsheets, and those spreadsheets are configured in a certain way that enable month end and year end to come together and be reconciled with some confidence. So letting go of that stuff is
comfort in a spreadsheet. Yeah,
it is comfort in a spreadsheet. Also, critical person dependencies within a business. Some people have carved their niche over a number of years, and they create their own little world where really they're very much at the core of making these things work. So those can also be a little difficult, especially when somebody's wearing a number of hats and they're kind of the juncture for a lot of this stuff happening within a business. So I think when you start to look at an ERP, and this is maybe where out of the box starts to help a little, as it starts to unpick some of those multiple hats, key person dependencies. So whilst an ERP is not the answer in full, it can help to unpick some of those things and answer some of those questions, especially where we say, what do we do today? What do we need to be doing in the future? It can help just get under the skin a little bit of those things. And I think just literally on the benefits side, just to, I guess, cap where Nick and Rob were, it's the only way of kind of truly knowing whether you're done. You know, when have we actually finished? And because there's an awful lot of questions that come up in boards outside of the governance for an ERP months after you've technically closed the program, which are have we really achieved what we set out to? And if you haven't set a really clear view on what the benefits were, the outcomes, that North Star up front, it's really difficult to be able to sit in one of those boardrooms and say, this has done the job we hoped it would.
Yeah, okay. Coming back onto that kind of change angle, so there's lots of kind of, there's lots of changes to ways of working. And I think we talked earlier, Rob, about it's not a technology implementation ERP, it's a business transformation. And how can you take that to an organization? How can you explain it's not just a system you're putting in, but actually it's everything, the entire business is going to change?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there will be process changes, there'll be organizational changes, different roles, responsibilities for doing this. How do you bring it to an organization? I don't know. I think that's yeah. What do you mean? How do you? I mean, how do you avoid it being an IT-led
Yes,
program?
I think that's, and often you see it as an IT-led, and it's the silver bullet. It's okay, you put a system in and it will all work, and you kind of go, there's more to it than that.
I think so. I think it kind of
think
leaves off the back of it kind of leaves off the back of that benefits discussion, which is, you know, when we're in the midst of implementation, where the discussion becomes very much about the functional aspects, technical integrations, very much progress reporting, and not talking to where we feel we are in terms of achieving those outcomes in terms of forecasting. I think that's where it can very quickly change, just by not talking about benefits from a transformation view to a technical implementation, and you're just delivering an ERP. I say just delivering an ERP. Transformation is generally the focus. You're trying to keep people's eyes on.
I think if you're having that early conversation, and some places do just have a burning platform, if you're constantly talking about, we just want to replace this platform, you're kind of thinking, well, you're kind of missing a point here, missing a trick as well. Like, you're just going to be very expensive like for like. So what are you really trying to achieve? What are you trying to get out of this? You know, what's the drivers for it? Start there. That one should eventually just slot down to this impact. You can see who this impacts, a vast number of people, probably multi-geography. Then you then start to talk about there are a lot of people that need to be involved in this, and responsible for it as well.
Yeah, and that communication element is really key, right from the start all the way through. Nick, if you got any, before we wrap up, have you got any thoughts on tips, perhaps on kind of how you can ensure that communication is consistent and relevant and really helps engage people?
Yeah, you know, I think communication plans, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, you know, making sure that you've got a comms plan and you've got an engagement plan and you've got all of those plans in place so everybody understands it. I suppose there are some top tips from my perspective that I think when it comes to communication that I always look towards. A really key one for me is about using existing channels. So if there are things that work really well within an organization, don't go and try and create your own ERP thing, which is going on over here, because nobody will know to go and look at it. They won't engage with it. So use things that are already at your disposal. If that's an intranet or if that's an e-newsletter, whatever it is, harness it and make it something that you can then really build a brand and an image that builds reputation and gets people to want to understand what's happening. We talked about frequency a little bit, making sure that we've got a consistent message, that it's being understood from the get-go, from the start, so that people can support it in the right way. It's also about who's delivering that messaging as well. So at 9 Feet Tall, we use a number of different methodologies and sort of take keys from different ones. ProSite's a really big one at the moment, and they talk very much about actually when it's a personal message, it needs to come from your line manager, from your supervisor, somebody that you really trust and you understand and understands you. But where it's something that's a more organizational led, you know, communication, that really needs to come from the top. That's from your founders, your CEOs, your top execs, because they're ultimately they know what's going on. There's a reputation there to understand their view in the organization. So let's make sure that the right people are given the right messages. And then I guess it's ultimately about understanding who your audience is with any communication, and then thinking, what's in it for me? What, you know, in that role, what do I need to know? What's the answers? What are the questions that I'm likely to have right now? And then just tailoring your communications accordingly to those situations, and making sure you can hit as many of those as you can. Most importantly, though, don't make it long. Nobody's got any time to read it. So, you know, try and do all of that in as short a space as few words as possible.
I like it. You make it sound simple, but it's key. And I think that communication knits it all together. It's been a whistle-stop tour of ERP, and I'm sure there'll be loads more questions coming out of the woodworks, but I think we've touched on pretty much all the key elements of ERP and where we feel things need to be looked at and addressed, and we've shared some really good top-10 insights. And maybe taking your lead there, Nick, to keep it short and simple, maybe we finish off with the three of you just giving one final top tip, and you can repeat what we've already said, where you think if someone is about to embark on an ERP program, what's the one thing you want them to think about? Go on, Nick, I'll start with you.
When you were asking the chaps earlier about what's the sort of the big top issues that we see quite common, I would definitely say data is the biggest one. So do not underestimate the effort and the complexity of what data and data governance requires as part of one of these programs. Make sure that you've got suitable people with experience and knowledge and understanding of how to manage this. Because quite often, more often than not, we find that organizations are approaching these implementations from a position of immaturity. They've usually left it and their data is not tidy, not clean, not understood, not well governed. So you have to unpick all of that and start again. So yeah, absolutely make sure that you really prioritize data.
Yeah, they say bad data in is bad data out. So make sure that data is good. Okay.
That's a polite way of saying it. I couldn't possibly think of one thing. I think
really quickly three then.
Just following on from from Nick, I think the comms is everything he said is absolutely spot on. The delivery and who delivers is really important, but also baking in feedback loops. Often this has quite an impact on people, and you've got to give people a chance to talk about that and listen to that, and that inevitably then unearths things. So as you approach these things, get ready to unearth some things you had no idea you're going to unearth and adapt to that.
Good, thank you, Rob. And Dave, to finish it all off, your final nugget of gold.
Oh, I'm going to go super high level, I think, Esther. So I would go to make sure that you're really clear on how this supports delivery of your strategy going forward, because that's going to influence every conversation you have up front. It's going to influence your vendor selection, the scope you're looking to deliver, how much you're going to spend on it, all the rest. So having a really clear link between this is a strategic program enabling delivery of longer term strategy and for what purpose, growth, etc. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob, Nick and Dave, for being our panelists today. You've shared some really great insight. Thank you for all of you who joined today and those of you that are going to listen to it on the recorded version. If you are about to embark on an ERP program, or if you've got an ERP program in flight and you feel it'd be useful to have a health check and to have a look at some of the areas of your program which are going really well, but also where there's some gaps, then please do not hesitate to get in touch with me. So drop me a line, you'll get our details off the back of this session as well. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a good rest of the day.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.